All right, everybody, welcome back. It is episode 90 of Business on the Block. This is August 21st, 2024. We are down a man today. Unfortunately, Mike Neubauer is not able to join us, but I am joined, as always, by my lovely co-host, Michelle Peterson-Clark.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to those of us that were on, we'll say holidays in the UK, but we'll say vacation for you Americans listening.
As an American, I went on vacation as well. So we're back after a 2-week hiatus. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think it was 2 weeks.
This week on the pod, we're discussing a little AI crypto here. It is proving humanity and crypto debit cards. What we're going to discuss right now is what happens when AI becomes indistinguishable from humans online. We'll also tell you why you're about to get pitched on a crypto debit card. Yes, that's true. And you'll find out how OpenAI is now trying to attract the corporate clientele. What's the strategy? This week, as always, this is the Digital Business Revolution Analysis. Michelle, myself, and Mike, who's not joining us, will give you an insight into the business aspects of what you need to know, the cutting edge of technology, media, and how business is developing. So I'm going to take us right into story number one. And lacking Mike, we're not going to have the visuals for you guys. However, the need to prove humanity online. This is an article out of MIT, the education facility. As artificial intelligence agents become more advanced, it could become increasingly difficult to distinguish between AI-powered users and real humans on the internet. Researchers from MIT, OpenAI, and Microsoft are proposing now the use of what they call personhood credentials. This would be verification, enabling people to prove they are a real human online. I'll walk you through more of that in a moment. But Michelle, I guess we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think this is jumping the gun? Do you think this is going to be a needed thing going forward?
Well, as we were talking just before we came on air, boy, haven't we got to this situation in a really short amount of time. Like I just, it's a bit like, ugh, do we really have to be in this spot? You know, we've watched the Terminator and the Matrix movies and any sort of futuristic thing where you see, people pop out a false eyeball to put in one that's a retina display to prove who they are, or, like a false hand or fingerprints or whatever. Like, I mean, I think we're going to have to get to the point where we are going to have, something that is on our person, I would expect, all the time to be able to prove that we're human or not. Even though we know from movies that, ostensibly you could fake that. But when we were talking about it, my husband said, everyone needs to have a chip inserted in them. Well, can you imagine the civil libertarians will go absolutely nuts about that one, won't they?
I just did a road trip through the southern states of the United States here, and there's no chance that you're chipping folks down there, let me tell you. So, for those of you who are not familiar, Michelle, are you familiar with the dead internet theory? Because this is something that a lot of people haven't heard about. It's I can't call it conspiracy because it's just it's fun informational fodder. But basically, the dead internet theory states that at some point there'll be an inversion on the internet where there'll be more fake content, AI generated, whatever it is, than there is legit content. And humans will be the minority of the content on being produced out there. Like what you put out there as a person is such a small minority that all of the protective agents and the anti-fraud tools will actually target the human as opposed to the fake because they'll be the minority. So the dead internet theory has been floating around for a while. It actually has been studied and discussed extensively by the YouTube folks, like the business side of YouTube is always worried about trying to police the platform. And so all the fake news, AI generated drivel, all the stuff that they're worried about with the US elections, this is going to become more and more of a factor. And so the dead internet theory now becomes enough of a problem, if you will, or a potential problem, that major companies like Microsoft are trying to figure out how do we protect against non-human content and being able to prove that the humanity of online. I feel like this is going to be, no one knows this yet, and this is going not quite in the average circles of discussion, but ultimately people will need to prove their humanness in some way, shape, or form. I would want to know if I'm following Michelle Peterson Clark, right? I'm in the travel world and I like your stuff. To find out whether or not you're human is going to be the first thing I want to know.
Well, I mean, haven't we, what are we? We're just over 18 months in this journey, aren't we, with AI and Chat GPT coming out in November 22. And look what we've got already. So, and we've been told that the current versions of AI are like 10% of what they're going to be in 5 or 10 years' time. So, if you can imagine the improvement of what we've currently got, it is going to become almost impossible to work out based on articles written, even voice things, whether or not they're real people or not. Now, a recent example, a few months ago, my husband called our bank. Had to ring them for whatever reason it was, and after the first 2 minutes of talking to someone and answering questions, and when it said, "I'm just putting you through to blah blah blah" or whatever, he says to me before he gets through to what ostensibly became a real person, he said, "I actually don't think that was a real person up until this point." But he was having a reasonable conversation. It wasn't the go press one, go press two thing type of people. It wasn't that. It was real, what can I help you with today? Oh, I'd like to, change my password or something like that, and it's like, okay, so you want to change your password. Which particular account was it that you wanted to do it on? Like, it was this kind of conversation. And that, and we're not even, we're a fraction of the way through as to how this type of technology will develop. And I think it will become a problem when those people that are not ethical, and have less morals than the majority of us, start to take advantage of elderly people, or people who are not quite as intelligent or suspicious of this stuff. And when there's a rampantness of people having money stolen or identities stolen and duplicated, that's when it's suddenly governments are going to have to go, "Oh, hang on, we need to fix this now."
So I have two thoughts around this. Number one, I feel like we're already there. Like I'm in the newsletter world, same as you are, Michelle, and you often get these guys these AI newsletters at the end will say like, which is the real picture, which is the fake picture, and one of these is AI generated, and you can't tell the difference. So
No,
we're already in a phase where it's indistinguishable in many cases. There are avatars with voices, to your point, that oftentimes I'm like, I think that was AI, but I'm not sure. And so there'll come a point very quickly where we will absolutely have no chance of being able to tell the difference. So that leads to point number two. And as a business program, I want to connect this to the business angle. The unique value proposition for you as a company, whoever you are, eventually becomes the human aspect. So people want to connect with people. They always will. I know that there's Itana and these AI generated women that people follow on Instagram, but you're not going to develop a business relationship with that. What you want is a person connects with another person, knows, likes, and trusts them, and then money changes hands. That's how businesses operate. And that's going to require you to do two things. One, establish that you're a human, right? That whether it's these personalized credentials, if there's a technology tool to do that, I kind of feel that's where it'll go. But however you do it, you have to show that you're a person. Two, live streams become the main thing in social media when it's unclear who's real and who's not. If I can AI generate any kind of avatar I want, especially, I get on 11 Labs and I throw out some Hey Gen avatars and I put this all together, and there's the fake
yeah.
Mark Angelos telling you whatever I'm telling you. In fact, Elon Musk recently was on an interview and said, if you see me online pitching crypto, it's not me. And so I think that lives become when we have to start credentializing ourselves and proving our humanity, the social evolves into live streaming because that's a hard thing to avatar.
And one of the things, since Mike isn't here, I can trash Elon the whole episode, which is fantastic, with no comeback.
I'll put my mic hat
But the
on.
Yeah, but the problem with that, right, is that I have seen him, like when he goes Doge to the moon on his Twitter account, you can't say that him spruiking crypto isn't him at some later junction, right? So this I think is going to become one of the problems for all of us. Now, I mean, we're human and humans change their mind about things. 30 years ago, I never drank water, for example. I'd have juice or cordial or whatever. I didn't like water. Then I had 3 children. When I got pregnant the first time, I thought, oh, I really should not be having sweet, sugary things. So I started drinking water. Now, within a year, now I drink water probably most. I drink tea and water, and that's about it. Would you say then that, oh, I lied 25 or 30 years ago when I said I didn't like drinking water because I do now? So there's these sorts of things that happen, but the internet also has a memory that never forgets anything. And so there is always someone that is going to come up with, the tweet that said in, 2015 that Donald Trump should never, ever be the Republican candidate for president. And then later on, you're tweeted saying you should vote for him, for example. Those sorts of things rear their ugly head, and they will for the entire time you're in politics, the CEO or a famous person or whatever. So you're going to have to start to be much more mindful, I think, about the things that you put online, and that you're going to stand by them, because they will come back to haunt you if you're going to change it. And when we get to the point where you can be cloned, or an AI can produce information, or a video, or photos or whatever of you in particular situations, then you're going to have to be able to say, well, I'll stand on my record. I wasn't ever involved with that, and I've never ever talked about it, etc., etc. Those sorts of things, I think, are going to start to become more important.
So I have a close friend of mine, Keith, who's an AI developer out in California. And last year, as a lark, he built an AI avatar of me. I might have shared this story. And it was so realistic and sounded so much like me, not just in terms of the voice, but in terms of what the style of communication, the mannerisms, etc. That it was freaky enough. I'm like, Keith, I love that you built this. I'm not putting that out there. And so no,
Yeah.
really. Like, because I felt
Yeah, I
like
know.
it was disingenuous if I'm trying to build trust with an audience to have a fake me out there doing the thing. And he said to me, he's a very programmatic mind. He's a builder. He was like, "Why would you want to do the work if you could just have this machine doing this thing for you all day while you're in the backyard playing with the kids?" And he's right, but he's also there's a business front. So the point is, people are going to do it. They're already doing it, and it's going to eventually get good enough that you won't know the difference, and there'll be all sorts of businesses that turn out that there's no person behind it. This is like they're already working on the faceless YouTube channels. Those are all the rage for anyone following on social. And so the reality is, I believe we're already there. Anyone that runs a business or an initiative or any type of a side hustle should be thinking, I want to lean into the fact that I'm human, proving that, sharing stories,
Yeah.
sharing actual experiences. No matter how good an AI avatar is, it'll never have a personalized story to share.
And, one of the other things that comes up in the article further down is, and it's in that headline where they talk about, do governments need to introduce something like a personhood credential? I mean, I don't know about you, but most of the people I know have enough trouble dealing with government portals and proving who you are as it is now, without actually adding another layer to it. But we're going to get to the point maybe where we have to do that. Um, but I'm not sure what there is left unless you have to turn up to something. Like, I mean, I guess things that AI will never be able to do. It won't be able to take your driving test for you, for example, if you're a kid learning to drive and you want to get your license. So, a real person actually has to turn up at the Department of Motor Vehicles, don't they, in order to take the driving test. Now, I mean, I guess it can't be your avatar that does that. Because I'm pretty sure so there's going to be some things that are okay, but with banking and those sorts of things now turning so much more to online. I mean, I don't know about you, but particularly in Australia, I mean, here it's difficult as well in the UK, but I don't know about America, but they don't want you to go into the bank anymore. Like our local branch in Australia where we live, where we've walked in before, we used to know the manager, all of that stuff. There's like a greeter at the door who's like, "Oh, what can we help you with today?" Like they don't even want you to walk in anymore.
Yep.
And when you go, "Oh, I need to deposit this," they go, "Oh, let me show you how to do it over here at the ATM machine." It's like, no, no, I'd actually like to talk to a person because I'd like the bank to still employ some people, but
No
they don't,
way.
that's not what they want.
Michelle, how many of your kids have ever been, like, in the inside of a bank on their own? Just go with, like, the concept of going to a bank in
Oh,
my
no, never.
right.
Oh, they
It's
don't, do
gone.
they know where the banks are?
What it so ironically, here in the States, they're not even calling them banks oftentimes, they'll call them service centers. They don't actually
Ah,
wanna
yes.
consider themselves a bank. They would rather you do everything online, right? It's cheaper, it's easier, but the reality is an AI can never set up a bank account. If you remember the
No.
movie Shawshank Redemption? You ever seen this?
Yes. Yes.
The I won't give it away, but the crux of the movie, he sets up a fake bank account, several fake bank accounts at the end for and that was like a turning point in the movie. My point is we're at the point where online banking, especially now with crypto, which we'll talk about shortly, it's going to become where if you can't prove you're a person, they don't know what to do with the business end of your money. I create a faceless YouTube
Yeah.
channel. I generate $1 million a month, and I have a fake avatar that banks for me. Like that's what the government was worried about. So they will
Yeah.
come up with some way to prove who you are. They will just simply because it's a matter of control.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
a few things in the bulk chat before we move on to the next thing. One of the things that particularly in the UK right now, there's a problem with um, AI football players, so soccer players for the Americans listening, soccer players being impersonated using AIs online, and it's a big PR thing because like players here, they have large followings. Many. If you play for a big club and you're a good player, you can't really walk down the street without some little kid wanting a photo with you. All of that kind of stuff. So from a PR perspective, it's becoming a problem because people can create these videos of their stars, the ones they particularly like doing things, which is a bit of a problem. And and someone said that we all need to be performing the Turing test, and that's the way to overcome it.
So I agree with you, and I think that influential figures like soccer players, football players in Europe, they're not. They are very influential. They are going to swing
Yeah,
things like public opinion on from elections to products, and they don't. They have to protect that. If that is an intellectual property asset, if you are that in the business world, in the political world, it's a little more regulated and policed. People are you can't imitate the prime minister. That would be but meanwhile, if you're the local, soccer player, football player, that's a problem for those folks.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Well,
really good point.
there's lots of deep fakes out there of the presidents and past presidents and whatever doing and saying particular things. So, they kind of do it. But, one of the things I was thinking about too when we were looking at this article, and since we've been talking and the chat in Bolt, and shout out to Bolt Nation, thanks so much for joining us today, is that, perhaps this means that live videos like this um, are going to become more and more relevant. So if we think about it, let's think about the Olympics recently with Snoop Dogg and Olympic athletes and stuff like that. There was one of these Olympics were one of the most successful in terms of viewership and people following along and people being engaged, much more than there has been in the last couple of them. And I know that the 2000 Olympics, 2020 Olympics and 2021, there was no crowds because of COVID. But, like the engagement, I think, on socials around um, Olympic athletes, like, I've arrived at the Olympic Village, with their phone. I've arrived at the Olympic Village. Here's my room. And, like walking around, here's what we get to eat. I've got a room with 7 others. And the Australian Olympic team did this really well. Like, here's the Australian Olympic Village. We've got 7 floors. We've got this and that, whatever. There was all that. There was all the Snoop Dogg stuff where he turned up, dressed up at events. You know, he was at the equestrian in his equestrian outfit. You know, him, Tom Cruise, we're all cheering Simone Biles at the gymnastics, for example. So those sorts of things, when it's the people themselves posting the videos and it's real time.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, you can tell mostly so far, can't vouch for that in another 2 years' time, but you can tell so far that that's actually a real person doing it. And that I think is going to become more and more important as we go on.
So, as a little inside scoop here, we've done 90 episodes of this program, and they've all been live except for I think 2 or 3 maybe we've pre-recorded with the holidays. And that's
Yeah.
because number 1, I always believe this was a differentiator, that people doing anything live is
Yes.
hard to duplicate in terms of someone else to copy it, right? The content can be stolen, the material can be copied, but the reality is engaging with someone, especially early on, we had a lot of back and forth. Before we were growing, it was a lot more of the one-on-one back and forths with folks on previous platforms. That's not something that is easy to duplicate, and I think that this will
No.
become more of the norm for other folks in the world of social. All right, I'm
And I
gonna take
think
this.
too,
Go ahead.
okay, no, I was going to say, and I think too, the other thing is that, you know, like I was going to say the stuff we say, I'm pretty sure people wouldn't make up with AI, but you know, the back and forth and the interaction stuff, as you say, is, you know, and I can hold up, I have 10 fingers on my hand. So we can prove that we're not AI by the fact that we actually don't have multiple digits on any parts of our bodies.
I think we're beyond that. Like, you remember the days of 6 fingers, but I think that AI now, like, even the hesitation and the vocal inflections, the ums, the ahs, that's all there now. It's crazy. All
Yeah.
right, I'm taking us into story
Okay.
number 2, if that's all right with you. All right, this story
And is
is
it going to be conspiracy corner?
uh
Do we get a second banner?
all right, we'll do a conspiracy corner. Yes, this one is going to be conspiracy corner. Grab your hat first. I'm taking us into conspiracy corner with this one, folks. All right, this story, I want to pull up the screenshot so you guys can see this, is coming off of it's a MetaMask story out of the Bloc. MetaMask is introducing a crypto debit card. MetaMask's new crypto debit card will be powered by MasterCard and available on the fintech platform Banks. Basically, this is a card that will allow you to use your crypto wherever MasterCard is accepted. However, you must keep your crypto on chain using the Linea network, which is an Ethereum layer 2. The MetaMask card is available only in the EU and the UK right now, and their pitch is MetaMask as a self-custodial wallet allows users to control their private keys, so you're still in the DeFi world. What do you think about this, Michelle? Is this? Are we still in the DeFi world?
Um, Look, I think that eventually this will be how it works. However, I think this is pretty early. I think it's a small market segment. Like, you know, we've been in this Web3 world for a very long time, and I had to look up who Linea were because I didn't know about them. One of the things that they really press home on their homepage for it's linear.build, there's a link in one of the articles too, is security. They're really, so it will be interesting when they have their first hack if that happens. But you know, one of their things is that they are really spending a lot of time making the safest Web3 interaction tools out there. So that's the first thing. So you know, there's all of those issues as well. But one of the things that I think is interesting about it is that they are starting only with a small pilot project of a few thousand digital cards, so digital only. So essentially what they're going to do is you set it up on your phone, just like you have your MetaMask wallet, but you'll have your credit card. So you'll be able to use your phone in order to transact. And in theory, this is an extension of the Bitcoin pizza, isn't it? So what you do with this is that you walk into your pizza shop, and you will be able to use this card to pay for goods and services, or your supermarket. And basically what it does is it eliminates the current friction where you have to turn your cryptocurrency into fiat and then put it into, say, your bank account in order to access it with your credit card. That takes those couple of middle steps away. So it becomes less, it reduces the friction in order for you to be able to use it. It instantly converts it within the app. I think that we will get to that point eventually, but I'm not sure. I would be interested to see how well it works with the few thousand. They kind of don't in the article. They don't really give you a time frame as to how long the trial's going to go through and stuff like that. But they're saying that they will phase it across, into other countries and stuff like that. But
Okay.
at the moment, let's see.
The reason that I thought this was conspiracy corner while we're wearing our tinfoil at the moment, I want to define traditional finance versus decentralized finance. TradFi has a middleman, the banking system. We all know this. The whole concept of Web3 decentralized finance back in the day, in the early start of crypto, was that you didn't need this centralized middleman thing, the banks. And so I've maintained this from the beginning, all 90 episodes. We are slowly going to see the bleeding of DeFi into TradFi, and the term they're going to use is digital finance. That means
Yeah.
the banks take over the crypto. Now, there's two things I'll say. Number one, whenever you have a centralized anything, there's going to be hacks. You just mentioned this, Michelle. It's a great point. Like, there will be a hack, and that would be the worst in the world of optics for the transfer to get people on board to this platform. Whether or not you transfer from the transactional moment, the point of transaction, and it goes to fiat and then transfers, or it goes into crypto and then transfers, is not the point. The point is whether it has to go through a banking system of some sort. And with MasterCard running the show, yes, it does. So you can have a
Yeah.
whole new network called banks. You can have crypto being the thing being transferred. But at the end of the day, if MasterCard is the monitoring body, it knows everything that's going on, then that is not decentralized finance. That is digital finance, which is essentially traditional banking. And this is them pulling the wool over the eyes. It's almost a marketing job. The reality is you don't need the banks. The minute the banks are there,
Yeah.
I know MasterCard's
Yeah.
not a bank technically, but any of these apps from PayPal and Stripe, Venmo, MasterCard, all the debit cards, it's all the same thing. There's a centralized
Yes.
middleman. And I'm,
Yeah.
as a former Wall Street guy, like, I know how that whole system works. There's money. The reason the middleman exists is they skim a little bit off the top. You can call it gas fees, but the
Yes.
money's going
Yeah.
somewhere. I
Yeah.
I think that people are gonna fall into this and think like, "Oh, I'm using crypto. This is easy. This is great." And I know the difficulties of crypto, the friction is why people have not, the wallets, it's why it hasn't been adopted so quickly, is the protective feature. So, you'll get some folks that will wanna do it. Most folks won't. They want the easy 1-800 customer service number. I
Yeah.
lost my keys. But the reality is you're trading something. It's not just about I get to use crypto in the store. The second point is Bitcoin. Everything I just said will relate to everything other than Bitcoin. In the world of Bitcoin, they will never be able to control it because you can never print it. Everything else is printable. And I'll explain that more later, but I want to just make the distinction between Bitcoin and every other crypto.
Now, I mean, this is not the first time that you're able to do this. Like, we have a Wirex card which uses crypto to do that, but you have a physical card to do that. There is an app on your phone, you can check your balance and stuff, but you need to front up with the card or use the digits on the card like a traditional credit card. But I think the important thing about this is it's MetaMask. We know that MetaMask have over 50% of the wallet they hold for crypto users. They're a huge player within the self custodial sector, and teaming up with them and with Mastercard makes it feel like it's becoming more mainstream. Now, whether that will work or not, I think is another question, another story. But the fact that people will go, oh, MetaMask, oh, MasterCard. And because of that, they'll think there's synergies and it must be okay, and they might try it.
So this is why the conspiracy hat's here. They tried initially to make it so illegal. Crypto was they tried to outlaw it basically, right? They were running exchanges out of town on a rail if they were doing any type of crypto. Right? We all remember. So that didn't work. People still like crypto. Crypto's still growing. Now you've got the institutional Wall Street finance community moving into crypto because there's money there, meaning profit. Fine. So now they're going the other way with it. The government forces that be whatever are going to basically make it inconvenient to keep your crypto off chain, right, in a cold storage wallet. They're going to say like it's better. Oh, you're more protected. We can service you quicker. You just make it smoother of an experience, and over time they will try to win that business into the banking system. And for the most part, they will. But I really think that Bitcoin in the end stands alone as uncontrollable. And the reason for that is because you can't print it. All of this stuff here that MetaMask and Mastercard are going to work towards, it's all going to flow towards Ethereum. Ethereum is the easy one. Ethereum is where people, but they can print Ethereum eventually, and we're not
Yeah,
there yet. Like that's not the
yeah.
conversation today. But I really feel that they'll make it simple enough that the banking folks will just be like, well, you're better off just keeping it here, and that's where it goes. And I worry about that.
Putting my marketing hat on, I've already come up with an ad for them. So paying $1 million for your crypto punk that's now worth $1,000, spend it with your MasterCard, priceless.
Yeah. Wouldn't Mastercard love to have a small piece of any of that NFT craze that we lived through?
No, but I think that, the fact that it's now worth next to nothing, but MasterCard will help you spend it. It's priceless. I just thought that was very funny. Anyway.
The secondary play in this as a business show, again, I want to point out is what chain, this is where we need Mike's expertise here, but what they want to have it on a chain called the Linnea network. I'm not familiar with the Linnea network. There's a gazillion networks out there. Lots of
Yeah.
layer twos are making the Ethereum network faster. That's all true. Like that technology exists, it works, it's legit. But there's going to be a war over, okay, if MasterCard is leaning into banks in the Linnea network, what's Visa going to do? What's Stripe going to
Yeah.
do? So
Yes.
there's a blockchain battle that's going to have to, and we talked earlier in this program, I don't even know how many, 20 episodes ago, around the blockchains we believe will eventually collate or they'll coalesce around certain types of benefits. So you'll
Yes.
have the
Yep.
discount, and that's going to happen too here now that we're into institutional finance, and we are, then which blockchain ends up with which company? It's almost as if these major banks, think Bank of America or like JP Morgan, will need to have their preferred blockchain.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. And we've talked about whether or not they'll create their own, or they'll just go and buy one of the current blockchains and use that. Um, I, and interestingly, like as we said, as you said, there's so many of them out there. There's probably 1,000 different ones out there. Yet every day of the week, some business is creating a new blockchain that's their own. Why they don't go and find one that's already 3/4 done and buy it and fix it up and move on in a much shorter time frame. I don't know, but there you go.
Well, this is about control again, right? When you build it yourself, you can build every aspect of it. When it is bought, you have to figure out what is it, right? And so there's a distinction I'll draw between open source and closed source. Just because it's blockchain doesn't mean it's completely decentralized. You can
Yeah.
have a blockchain run by a bank and it works just like it's a blockchain. The technology works the way the technology works. However, it's not the open sourced freedom, you know, the DeFi thing that people
No.
think or it was back in the day is not. Just because it's blockchain doesn't make it decentralized.
Yeah, and I mean, and we've talked before. If eventually your driver's license or your passport are put on the blockchain, on a blockchain network by the government to be able to prove authentication and all of that kind of stuff, well, clearly that's not decentralized at all. But that's the technology part, as opposed to the cryptocurrency segment of it, which is what we're talking about in terms of wallets and things like that.
Yeah, and I think that this whole conversation around which blockchain is being used by which institution. So think about in the world of stock trading. The New York Stock Exchange will need a blockchain for clearing those trades,
Yeah,
settling and clearing them.
yeah,
The banking world needs a blockchain, and each bank, by the way, isn't going to use the other one's blockchain. So you're going to have competition in the sub layers of layer twos in the blockchain world that people aren't really aware of. Like most folks, just the thinking of the bank, but behind that is, well, how's that tech work? So there's a whole nother world there to keep an eye on.
yeah. As a segue, a side thing to that, if anyone's interested, have a look at the blockchain project for the Australian Stock Exchange clearing system. That after 7 years and $50 million, they dumped the project because they realised it was all too hard.
It's not their DNA, right? In
Yeah,
America, they're
yeah,
working
no.
the Canton network is what they've been using it for the clearing and settling for the banking on Wall Street. And that's it's you've got a lot of companies that have a lot of hands in the pot, if you will. Like this is the problem with centralization. If you're going to be centralized, then you have to it's I can't use the word collusion because that has connotation, but you have to have it working in the manner that everyone agrees it should work. And
Yeah,
so who controls that? Remember, in a decentralized world, you don't have to worry about these problems if no one controls it. In a centralized world, you're building a blockchain for all the stock exchanges to clear on. Someone's in charge, and the government
yeah,
wants to be that person.
I
All
do
right.
indeed.
I
Okay,
believe this section is where we would sorely miss Mike the most here, by the way.
we do.
All right. I'm taking us into story number 3. We can remove our tin foil. Let me, again, without Mike handles a lot of the technology behind the scenes here for those who don't care. Hang on a second. All right, OpenAI is what we're discussing right now. OpenAI is going to let companies customize its AI model, the GPT-4o. OpenAI now has a new feature letting corporate customers use their own corporate company data to customize GPT-4o. They call this fine tuning, and this fine tuning allows AI models to be trained on additional information about a particular subject area. So, what that basically means is your company does XYZ. You want to build a chat bot that can discuss that thing. OpenAI is making it easier for you to use their platform to do that rather than building your own private LLM. Many companies over the last 6 months, in my opinion, have realized the need for a private LLM, large language model, because they proprietary data. If you're a law firm, if you are a technology firm with, you've got your own trademarks, you're not going to just feed this into the generalized GPT that OpenAI runs. And so companies have been doing that. And the corporate world has not been really adopting the chat GPT models as quickly as the retail folks for those reasons. And so OpenAI realizes they can charge a lot more to a corporate company. They're trying to make it comfortable for that. What are your thoughts around this, Michelle? You think companies going to go for it? Do you think OpenAI is doing the right thing?
Well, I think there's more than one reason for this happening. Now, we've talked a few weeks ago, um, and for a couple of weeks, about the fact that they are spending, what was it, $7 billion a year? Is that
Yeah.
what you said, Mark? Yeah. And there's a lot of investors getting itchy feet about what it is that they have bought or invested in when they've given them the money. And OpenAI have to start pretty quickly, certainly within the next 12 months, coming up with ways in which they can earn more money than the $20 a month for the Chat GPT subscriptions. And I think this is one of their ways of thinking about doing it. So what they're saying here is that if we, and it's just like anything, like you can go onto Wix and do your website yourself, and within 2 hours we'll have a website up for you, and you just click and play and put in a few buttons, and you'll be able to have this fancy website up on the thing. Or they also run we can do it for you, but it will cost XYZ, and people opt in or they don't. This is a OpenAI's equivalent of that. There's Chat GPT, which you can use and people in your business can use, and it's limited to whatever. But if you want it to be more customized for your business, then this is our option that we have, and it's an upgrade, and this is what you pay or how much you pay. And they might do it individually depending on whether you're a Microsoft or, Papa John's Pizzas down the road.
I want to drill into something you mentioned, Michelle, the amount of money being spent or that has been spent on AI investments, right? And I'm talking specifically in the finance world, hedge funds, investment banks, like the amount of money that they have put into AI's return that hasn't happened yet is astronomical, billions. And now the big companies are questioning, why are we putting this money out at risk? AI is great, but it really hasn't returned like we thought it would. And so maybe this is just a bubble. Now, in real life, we know it is. However, in the corporate world, they're like, okay, we don't need to keep pumping money in. OpenAI lives off of money being pumped into the AI development. They are
Yeah.
living on lifelines from Microsoft right now. The burn rate on that company, it's billions per year. And so they need to have a proof of return. They need to have money generating from what they're building, right? Think of any other company making any other widget. You sell it at a profit. OpenAI is not really a big enough profit for the amount of spend that's going on. So
Yeah.
the money is hiding in the corporate folks that aren't paying because they're afraid. They don't want to have their proprietary data, blasted out into the world, and they are building their own private thing using the tech that OpenAI has proven. So rather than becoming a first mover that fails because the second mover gets a better way to do it, OpenAI is making their move here of, okay, let's enable these companies to build what they need and do so privately. I think this comes down to the Mark Zuckerberg argument of Facebook and Google don't be evil. Like at the end of the day, you got to trust these people that run these companies, these tech companies, are
Yeah.
actually going to protect you. Is OpenAI that company? Is Sam Altman that leader? What do you think?
Well, if you've watched any of our episodes before, you would likely say that we don't think necessarily that he is. However, I think there's a couple of things about this. One of the things that I thought was, straight out, they've said you have to upload your proprietary information to our system so we can merge it with ChatGPT, etc., etc. I think that eventually they're going to have to go the other way because, as we know, the Hewlett Packards of this world who had people put contracts and service agreements up to check the spelling or rewriting or the legalese of them, and then suddenly competitors found out what price they were selling particular services to originally in the early days of when the OpenAI first launched it. So there are companies are going to want a much greater amount of security around all of that than there currently is. And you can imagine there the Morgan Stanleys or the JP Morgans or the Googles or the Microsofts of this world are not going to put all of their corporate information up into OpenAI's database. That's not going to happen over the longer term. Small companies, it might not matter, but the big ones won't do that. The other thing too, I think, which is some great points raised by the people in the bulk chat, was that it's basically moving to a SaaS model, isn't it? Software as a service. And that is where the money is, because there are a lot of companies right now who produce or enable software, and you let companies use it in a proprietary way for a closed or an internal system for their companies, and using the service, the software like that is a much more sound business model than, so we're talking B2C, B2B rather than B2C. Because ultimately, how many more people now are going to pay the $20 US a month for Chat GPT? If you were going to buy in, you've done it before now.
I agree with that, but here's the problem with the SaaS model. I agree with the Bolt folks that they're going SaaS on this because that's what they know. This is the product of Silicon Valley. The problem with SaaS is if it's a small feature that you're paying $20 a month for, Canva or any kind of app, fine. But when my company is reliant and dependent upon it, I now have a risk, right? I don't have to remind people of a few weeks ago, CrowdStrike hobbled Microsoft's Windows globally because they had
Yeah.
some patch they didn't do right. And so Microsoft now has to look at that and say, like, okay, this is a business risk we didn't know we had. Well, guess
Yeah.
what? The rest of the world saw that too. So we're all looking at ChatGPT and saying, my company is completely dependent on this business. What if something happens? How many content creators do you know, Michelle, that like literally rely on AI every day? And without that, they're back to having to write stuff like they wouldn't be able to do it. And so, which is taking to point number two, and you're not going to like this. Elon Musk is building an open sourced AI platform out of Grok, which is still
Yep.
not proven and still not out there. But the concept of an open sourced AI model that I can just take it myself in house, they don't know anything of what I'm doing with the thing, and I can build my own stuff. Open source wins at the end of the day, in my opinion, because people people will use people have no regard for their privacy. We've seen that, but companies, they are very much going to protect their privacy, and they're not going to go closed source.
So, a question in the Bolt chat was, wouldn't that argument apply to all enterprise software, Mark? Directed at you.
Yes, it would apply to all enterprise software, but the all enterprise software, when it depends on the level of reliance of your firm upon that enterprise software. So, for example, when Disney was overly reliant on Pixar making their movies to the point where Disney Pictures was producing crappy movies and the Pixars were out of the park, Disney was forced to buy Pixar. So that's what ends up happening. Microsoft owns most 49% of OpenAI. So they don't own them, but enough so that they're not going to sell it. And who's buying Microsoft? So you don't have the option. My point
Yeah.
is the reliant factor is a problem. And these companies, if I ran a major software company and it was relying upon ChatGPT for whatever, my chatbots or especially in the production line of what I make, I'm going to
Yes.
think twice before I say, yeah, let's just hope they don't screw anything up for us. Because if I go
Yeah.
out of business and it's not my fault, I'm pretty upset about it.
I mean, I can see that if they layer the information provided, then possibly it could work. And I still think that my argument earlier on when we were talking about this was, we pull Chat GPT data down into our company stuff, and then it works in there, and it's updated, overnight or every 2 days or whatever,
But that's
rather
open
than
source. That means that they don't then
yes. Yeah, rather than us push our stuff up into ChatGPT, because at that level, they would have to have way more security protocols than I think that they have now.
and no matter how secure your protocols are, we've already seen that hacks are always possible. There was an
Yeah.
article last week. It's not part of the show, but every single United States citizen's social security number, which is our private, has been hacked at some point. So
Yeah.
300 million
Yeah.
people's private data. My point is, like, it's not protectable permanently forever for every company, and they're not going to rely on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially, by the way, if you're a large, powerful money making firm, let's say you're Amazon, or better yet, you're a competitor like Google. Like, you're just open source is the only way that this will win in the end because people will want it, meaning the companies. And I don't know that Elon's is the one to do it. Maybe his falls flat. He definitely is a polarizing figure, but I feel like that version, like you described, is going to be what emerges ultimately. And OpenAI has a problem. That's a Microsoft problem ultimately. So
Yeah.
it doesn't mean they go out of business. It means that they don't become the dominating. They will only own the B2C space, not the B2B space. But if you're a small enough company and you're not relying upon them enough, only a small piece of your business is built on what their AI thing is doing for you. Yeah, they'll get their corporate customers. They'll make money from this.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, as long as you as a company don't sack, 99% of your 100,000 workers and just have 10 people looking at this AI model and making sure it runs properly, then, you shouldn't have any problems.
Yeah.
But if you do that, then ultimately, as you say, measuring the risk of what this means, is interesting. I will be interested to see, um, which companies, and it'll come out eventually over the next 6 months, actually take up this option, because I think that OpenAI have a lot more work to do at their end in terms of security and compartmentalizing
I,
um,
I
the,
agree.
the 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 barriers between companies' information than they currently are able to do.
I'd be very surprised if people believe that they have the barriers in place they say they have in place. All right, I'm going to give us a
Yeah.
quick recap, and we're gonna get some takeaways from this. Stories we covered this week in episode 90 was number 1, proving humanity and crypto. I'm sorry, proving humanity online. This is the AI as agents become increasingly difficult to distinguish between human content and AI content. Do we need a verification enabling people to prove they are human? Story number 2, uh, MetaMask, our conspiracy corner. There's now a MetaMask debit card. They're pairing up with MasterCard and a new Ethereum layer 2 platform, and you can spend your crypto where you spend your MasterCard. And finally, OpenAI letting companies customize its models. This fine tuning is trying to land some of the corporate clients they've not been able to get. Michelle, what do you think are the most relevant stories for the week?
So I think that, sort of summing up and drawing the three of them together is, and we've talked about it before, things are moving at a rapid rate and at a pace that no governments in the world are keeping up with. Even though, say perhaps here in the EU, sorry, not here because we're not in the EU anymore, but in the UK and in the EU, there's more regulation than say in the US, but ultimately everyone is always behind the 8 ball. And that means that the proving you're human stuff, the securities around a crypto MasterCard, and the securities around giving OpenAI all of your information, still there is a Grand Canyon size chasm between what people want and hope for and what's actually available right now.
So, as a content strategist, my biggest takeaway here was the need to prove humanity online is going to lead to lives and live engagements. I think that
Yeah.
interaction with your base, communicating what you do as a company, no matter who you are or what you offer, your communication is the most valuable aspect of your company, because you may be the best thing, but if no one knows it, it doesn't matter. And
Yeah.
so, being able to distinguish from the AI world, and you're going to stand out as being human, whether or not there's any type of verification before. You're not going to wait on that. You need to be thinking live streams, back and forth engagement, stuff like this as a company. That's been my big takeaway for a while. I also think to comment on the other 2 stories, you can expect the TradFi to take over DeFi. Like, that's how it's going to go, unfortunately. And OpenAI, yeah, we'll continue to follow that story. That's a long way from being finished.
Yes. And my dog's come to say hello. So hello to everyone from Chloe.
I don't have a dog to show you, but all right.
So you can tell that's live. We're live TV here.
That's right. We come to you every week at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. The Business on the Block is your weekly insight into the digital business revolution. Our goal is to provide a thoughtful business conversation around the developments in tech, media, and finance. We feel that it's not just the get-rich-quick stuff, but there needs to be an actual business-oriented discussion to try to understand how companies can make money, how we can all profit from what's happening in the world. Because honestly, it's so quickly developing, you're not going to find it anywhere else but online. Michelle, thank you for joining this week. Oh, go ahead.
And I thought that without Mike here, we'd be 30% less time, but we're not.
Yeah, that's all right. It's been nice to be able to get a word in, huh?
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Peace.
Bye.